Well, thank you so much for joining us for this conversation from the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth College, sharing a little bit with you about the perspective from the Tuck School, words about our curriculum, about career services, and many other questions that I'm sure you have on your mind. My name is Amy Mitson. I'm the Director of Admissions focused on recruitment and marketing at Tuck. I'm joined by Stephen Pidgeon and Joe Hall, and we'll just go through introductions, and then we're going to get through some very popular questions that we often hear from audiences, and then also time for your very specific questions as we move forward in this conversation. So thank you for joining us wherever you are in the world. We all happen to be in Hanover, New Hampshire right now. So again, my name is Amy Mitson. I've been at Tuck for about 25 years now. Never expected to be at Tuck that long, but there's always been another great opportunity. So over that time, I've had a combination of opportunities to serve in our MBA program office, which is like our one-stop shop for all student services and support at Tuck. Did that for many years and then came over to admissions. I knew what it took to be a student at Tuck because I worked closely with them, but I had no idea what it took to get into Tuck. And there has never been a dull moment here working on the admissions team as a member of the admissions committee. So reading files, interviewing, recruiting, traveling across the globe to meet candidates. And so just really happy to share the knowledge that I've gained in the last many years about the Tuck admissions process and share it with you. Very happy again to be joined by Joe Hall and Stephen Pidgeon, and I will hand it to Joe for his introduction first.
Thank you, Amy, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to all of you, depending on where you are around the world. Like Amy, I have been at the Tech School for about 25 years. I am a faculty member in the operations management area at Tuck, and the last 6 years I've been in the dean's office as well, with a role overseeing teaching and learning. Again, like Amy, I never thought that I would necessarily be here 2.5 decades. And if I think about, why am I still here? I think it's the same reason that attracts our MBA students to Tuck. It's an amazing community. It's an immersive community. And the thing I love about it is the people. And that's the reason that I'm still here after 2.5 decades. Really an amazing set of colleagues, students, faculty, staff at Tuck. There's just something magical and special about the set of folks who will opt to come to study, to research, to teach, to work in a place like Hanover, New Hampshire. And we all benefit from that amazing set of people that come here. Over the 25 years that I've been at Tuck, I have occasionally taught at some of our peer business schools. And as we go through the questions today, I'll have a chance probably to comment on some of what I've seen elsewhere. I originally came to Tuck right after finishing my PhD at, I'm probably supposed to call the school the Tuck of Palo Alto. And so came here right after finishing my PhD. Just really an amazing experience for me being here. And I'll mention that about 30 minutes ago, a couple of very recent Tuck alums stopped by my office to thank me for the amazing experience they had during their 22 months here. And I turned right around and thanked them because these two students were really instrumental in creating their experience at Tuck. And if attending an MBA program that is immersive, that is personal, that is connected, and where you'll have a chance to co-create your experience along with the staff and faculty, if that's important to you, there is no better place to get your MBA than the Tuck School of Business. And I'll stop there and leave the rest of my material for some of the questions that are coming.
Thank you so much, Joe. Go ahead, Stephen.
Hi, everyone. I'm Stephen Pidgeon. I'm a Tuck class of 07. Let's see, I'll talk a bit about myself and then about my job. So about me, I actually did my undergraduate degree in film and TV in the UK. You can hear I've got a funny accent. I'm from over there. I see some of you joining from India. Do not tell me the result of day 5 of the test match. I'll be watching the highlights later. So why did I come to do an MBA? I wanted to take my career in a completely different place. I was good at one thing. I was very interested in everything else. So I thought the MBA was the perfect place to do it. And actually, I started looking around at the schools that were out there. And as soon as I saw Tuck, I saw this sort of rural location, small class size, intimate setting, and really this idea of the retreat. I'll go to a place, spend that 2 years in community with a bunch of like-minded people. I just knew I was in. Came here, brought my wife and my 2 children. So lived here as a student with a partner, with a family, which is very common. We have lots of families here. Had an absolute blast here as a student. I was like a kid in a candy store, like so many great classes. I was fortunate to be a TA for Joe Hall in the ops class. That was one of my favorites. Afterwards, I went to work as a consultant at McKinsey. Again, it was a job I didn't really know much about, but as soon as I learned about it, it seemed to me taking that kid in a candy store mentality and doing more of that, learning more, playing in different sandboxes, as it were. Really enjoyed that. And then after about 4 years, got the chance to move back to Tuck as a career advisor, which I've completely loved. So I've been back here at Tuck now for 14 years, and the time has really flown. So I run our amazing career office, and we can get a bit more into what I think makes us amazing and why we love our work so much. But yeah, really can't think of a better place to have done my MBA and to be part of the alumni network and actually super excited to talk to you all and learn about what's on your minds.
Thank you so much. Both agree with everything that has been said here, and the people are certainly a strong foundation of what makes Tuck unique, and also the way we get to know one another. When in talking with prospective students, everyone's coming from a different place, but the minute they cross the threshold into Tuck Hall, everyone is in the same place and on the same page and getting ready to go through a group experience together that is really going to challenge them when it comes to the classroom, when it comes to the career search, and many other things we can talk about. But I'd love to turn our discussion back toward Joe as a dean and faculty member who has seen and taught in this curriculum for many years, to share a little bit about the uniqueness of the classroom, the learning, and the teaching environment at Tuck for our students.
Yeah, Amy, I'll give this away. Amy, you prime me a little bit to be thinking about, what's unique, what's special about Tuck when it comes to teaching and learning. And teaching and learning is my portfolio as a member of the dean's office here. And there's a couple things that come to mind that I think really make Tuck stand out. And number one is the quality of the teaching. Many of our peer schools have good teachers, and at some of those schools, the outlier teachers are that handful of teachers that are just amazing in the classroom. I'll say at Tuck, the teaching standard across the board is very, very high. And our outlier faculty at Tuck are the faculty that are just good in the classroom. The standard of teaching here is just super high. And no matter whether an instructor is using the case method or lecturing, doing role-playing exercises, running simulations, you can assume that instructor is going to be at the top of their game with whatever pedagogy style they're using in the classroom. As I mentioned earlier, I've taught at some of our peer schools over the years I've been here at Tuck. And I'm going to pat myself on the back, but there's a message to what I'm going to say next. At 2 of those peer schools, on the last day of class, the students have given me a standing ovation, right? Kind of celebrating their experience in my classroom. I just finished teaching here at Tuck about a month ago, and I got just a little bit of polite applause from the Tuck students. And the reason is the standard of teaching here is just incredibly high. I go elsewhere, I'm a star. I come back here, I'm one of a very, very large set of great faculty. I won the teaching award, 13 years ago here at Tuck. I'm probably at the point of my career where I'm never going to win it again because we have so many amazing faculty at Tuck. And again, I hesitate to tell you that without showing you that. And so I'd encourage all of you to come and visit Tuck, because part of the visit process is to actually sit in on one of our classes. Don't take my word for it. Come and actually see what we do in the classroom, because it's an amazing experience. And academics is one part of the MBA student experience. It's a part that we really have figured out and really do a darn good job of. So teaching quality, that's one thing that sets Tuck apart. I'll say another thing that sets Tuck apart, and if you started looking at MBA programs and the curriculum that they offer, we're one of, what is now a fairly small set of schools that offer a very extensive core curriculum. Our core curriculum lasts for much of the first year, not all of the first year. There's an opportunity to take some electives in the winter and spring of your first year. But the core curriculum here is a big part of your first year experience at Tuck. And what we've seen over the last decade or so is that many of our peer schools have whittled away their core curriculum and made it smaller and shorter and less intense. And I don't know why all of them have done it, but I was teaching at one of our peer schools in New York City. I won't name the school, but it was in New York City. And I remember while I was there, I was chatting with the person who held my job at that school, who also happened to be a faculty member in my area of operations management. And this person told me point blank that they get a lot at this school, not Tuck, at this other school, they get a lot of complaints about teaching in their core curriculum. And so as a result of that, they were trimming courses out of their core. And my hypothesis is that this is true at many of our peer schools. The students have complained about the quality of teaching in the core, and as a result, many of those schools have trimmed their core curriculum back. And if you look at the set of schools that still have an extensive core curriculum, I won't name them, but if you start looking at MBA programs, you'll quickly determine there are a few that really tout how extensive and deep their core curriculum is. They're all schools that are known for high quality teaching, right? And I think that's super important that, we're not teaching what we teach because we're good at it or bad at it. We're teaching what we teach because it's important. And we feel supremely confident that knowing a little bit about many different functional areas in business will stand you in very good stead over the 30 or 40 years career that you're going to have post MBA. You might think today, you might even know today that you're going to be all about finance. But if you spend your whole career in finance, eventually some of that marketing stuff is going to become relevant as you start thinking about selling financial products. And even the stuff I teach, the operations stuff, may eventually become relevant as you start thinking about the processes and how you optimize the processes within that finance function. So again, a very extensive core curriculum at Tuck. I think what you're going to see is that many of our peer schools have trimmed back that core curriculum, in many cases because the quality of the teaching and the complaints they receive about the teaching in the core. We do not have that problem at Tuck. And again, we believe very firmly that core curriculum is going to be important. I'll also add that, we talk about the sense of community at a place like Tuck. The shared experience of going through our core is also a key part of building that sense of esprit de corps, that sense of community in Tuck's MBA program. As Stephen mentioned, he had me for operations management years ago when he came through Tuck, and we really get to know our students well in the core, and it's just a fundamental part of being a Tuckie. You run into a Tuck MBA, you know what they've experienced as part of that MBA program. Plenty of time for electives, plenty of time to specialize in the things you want to specialize, but that core really builds a super strong foundation in your first year. Amy, I think that's probably a pretty good overview.
That is perfect. There's so much I could say in follow-up, but I would love for you to share just one more question, just sharing with our audience, what's new? Maybe either new courses or new experiential learning, something that students have taken on this year that you've seen faculty do that's new.
Yeah. So, it's a great question. And I will say that we started something a couple of years ago at Tuck that is really a gift that just keeps on giving. So 2 years ago at Tuck, we stood up an entirely new type of course in our elective curriculum that we call a sprint. And a sprint course it's kind of what it sounds like. It's a really quick hit on a topic. Sprints are 3 90-minute sessions on a topic. They're graded pass, fail. There's some kind of a deliverable at the end that you're going to hand in as a student and the instructor is going to grade. But what these sprints allow us to do is very quickly stand up courses on a super broad range of content. And so every year, typically we're introducing, 8 to 10 new sprint courses. And it's just super fun for me to go out and talk to students and find out what they're interested in and what they want us to add to the curriculum, and then go source courses in those various areas. So emerging markets is a real area of interest for many of our students. And it turns out that the former US ambassador to Rwanda is teaching at our parent institution. And so we've enlisted her to come to Tuck and teach a course about emerging markets and business opportunities in Africa. Super, super interesting thing. We've got a new course on the art market taught by a professor of art history at our parent institution. We've got a course on the wine industry that was new just about a month ago, taught by one of our strategy faculty, partnered with a professor of Italian studies at our parent institution who's an expert in the food and beverage space. So these sprint courses are just a wonderful way for us to stand up new content. I'll share a few others with you as I look at my list here. First-time manager course, which is a new course that we stood up this winter for folks that are moving into their first opportunity to manage people. How do you think about hiring? How do you think about doing performance evaluations? How do you have difficult conversations with people that report to you? So a bunch of issues that first-time managers need to work on. Another new course that we stood up this winter, Intro to Family Enterprise. This is something that over the last few years, students have come to me and said, Joe, I come from a family business. It would be great if Tuck did a bit more on family business. We ended up creating a course that's a partnership between one of our strategy faculty and a Tuck alum who served as CEO, was the 7th generation of his family to run a 300-year-old family business. So really, really cool opportunities. And I will say the amazing thing about these sprint courses is, as I said earlier, I can listen to students, I can get a sense from them what they want to see, and then we can go and source someone to teach a course on that topic. So it's kind of the gift that keeps giving. Again, every year, roughly 10 new sprint courses get added to the curriculum. Amy mentioned our global experience as well. So we're one of a very small number of MBA programs that requires all of our MBA students to have a global experience at some point during the 2 years that they're with us. Most of our students end up satisfying that global requirement with what we call a Global Insight Expedition. And this is 8 days, 25 students, 8 days in country with a faculty member. Generally, the courses are built around a theme. And new locations we went to this academic year: Singapore, Switzerland, Argentina, South Africa. I led one of these to Japan about a year and a half ago. Just a really interesting experience. And every year we add 4 or 5 new locations based on where we see student interest. And a lot of student interest today in Asia, in Latin America, in Africa. And we strive to set up those global experience courses in those areas that students really want to go to.
Thank you so much for all the highlights, Joe. I'm sure that the audience had so many takeaways from that, but also Joe has challenged you all to do a little bit of research about schools that do have a core curriculum, what that could mean for you, and just painting a really great picture of the kind of the broad-based core that we have at Tuck. And in that, you'll take courses that maybe you weren't expecting to take, and then you head into the elective curriculum with the variety of the many sprints, practicums, full-term experiential courses that Joe mentioned that give you total choice. So it's an incredible complement and great foundation as you go through at Tuck. So thanks so much for that, Joe. And then another incredible piece of the Tuck experience for students is the job search. And when students write in their applications what they hope to do, what their goals are, how they want to work with career services, the career services team partners with them to help, partners with you, our audience here, to help you move forward on what you are seeking. So I'd love for Stephen to open up this part of our conversation to highlight and talk through some of the resources and support from career services to students at Tuck.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah, it's really, I mean, listening to Joe talking, it reminded me of what I said in my intro. I think my primary goal when I thought about doing an MBA was both I wanted to learn about a lot of things, and all of that would come to nothing if I didn't get a new job, that, you know, the sort of job that would make this financial investment, this investment of time worthwhile, where I could really sort of leapfrog into the kind of career or spaces that really weren't open to me if I didn't have an MBA. And you know, we honor that. I know that all of you will be sort of, you probably got an Excel model that talks about the costs and the predicted returns. If you haven't, you should have. I'm sure you do already. So let's talk a bit about some of the ways that we work with students to sort of help them achieve those goals. I mean, first of all, I'll talk about our team. So we have an awesome team of career advisors. I keep in touch with the people who run the career offices at all of the peer schools. We have the best resourced team per number of students out there. So, and that's important to us because we feel very strongly about having a personal connection with each of you. You know, you're all coming as individuals. You're coming from all around the world with your own background, your own hopes and dreams and desires. So we work with you one-on-one as you sort of go through this journey. So that's the first thing is sort of gathering together a great team. When I look at our team, many of our advisors have actually worked in the spaces that you might be interested in. So for instance, financial services and banking, my colleague Deirdre, she had a very long and successful career in investment banking before she decided then to sort of step away and be an advisor in that space. In terms of consulting, there's actually out of our 8 advisors, 3 of us have formerly worked at one of McKinsey, Bain, or BCG. 2 of us at McKinsey and 1 at Bain, and so we're very well placed to sort of help you think about that career. And you know, we could go on. So, for instance, with tech, our tech advisor Laura, she's a Tuck alum. She's worked in big and small tech firms. She actually lives out in the Bay Area and works for us full time, helping students get into that space. So I think that's important. First of all, is just look at the career offices and look at like who they have there. Who are the people who are going to be helping you think through and get the jobs you want. Secondly, and this is something I didn't really know much about when I was an applicant. You know, universities, like, I guess they have professors, I guess they have, you know, companies come. I didn't realize, and maybe this is an American thing, and maybe it is, how much of recruiting is influenced by alumni. And some of this is what we can sort of talk about as networking. So, you know, if you want to have a chance to learn about a job, if you want to have a chance to get an interview with a company, even if you're in that interview process and you want somebody to kind of pound the table for you, it can really help if you are at a school where you've got a passionate network of alumni who will take your call and talk to you about that job, who will help you or do interview practice with you. I mean, this blew my mind when I came here. I was like, wait a minute. Some of these companies, they're literally the most in-demand companies in the world. And if you're not at a business school, they won't even, you know, take your call. When you're at one of these places, not only will people there take your call, they'll actually call you back and that give you interview practice and help you get the job. That kind of blew my mind. And so here again, I think this plays into Tuck's strengths. So here's something else I didn't know about before I came to an American business school. Actually, in America, it's very common for alumni of schools to give back money to their school. And my undergraduate institution in London, they've never asked me for money. I've never sent them money. That's just not even on the table. But Tuck and Dartmouth and all the great schools you'll be looking for, they form such great bonds with their alumni that the alumni become supporters. Well, I say Tuck actually is by far and away the best at forming these bonds. So here's a stat that, you know, we're very proud of, that the number of our alumni who give back financially to Tuck every single year is not only the highest among all business schools, it's the highest among all academic institutions out there, and we're more than double most of our peer schools. So if you take that sort of just as a proxy for, is this person glad they went here? Are they happy to help? And now you apply that to, you're a student, you need some help, you need to email an alum, phone an alum, probably, you know, you're going to get somebody who's very happy to talk to you. Equally then, you know, when you're out there working, and let's say like me, you know, you're at the Boston office of McKinsey, and the recruiter says, hey, we need some people to go up to Tuck and do a wine event and meet some of the students, you'll be raising your hand saying, yes, please, I want to go there. And the other nice thing then is you come up here, we're a couple of hours away from the major cities, so you've made the conscious decision to come here. You probably booked into a beautiful hotel in town, and you're now thinking, hey, I want to stay here. I want to spend the day. I want to spend the evening. Maybe I'll revisit some of the restaurants and bars I used to love visiting as a student. So multiply that across all the visitors who come here, whether that's a visiting exec, maybe a very high-powered CEO, maybe that's a recent alum who's come up here to do an event. They're going to be here. You get to have lunch with them. You get to meet with them. You maybe meet them in the bar afterwards. You maybe sign up for a dinner with them. So really, we've got our team. We've got alumni. Clearly, we've got great faculty who are teaching you the things you need to know, and who incidentally will also be thought partners. When you want to talk to them about, hey, how do I take what I'm learning here and apply it? Many of our faculty are already doing some of that work with companies and can help you think about that. Final thought is our centers. So we have these things called centers, which are essentially ways of us saying, hey, we know there's an area, for instance, like entrepreneurship or private equity. We know that people maybe want to go on a particular deep dive into this space this isn't a major, but it's just more about a chance to gather together like-minded people. Maybe you do some research, maybe you meet visiting executives, etc. So these are also ways that we can help you kind of build an expertise, move the needle on your resume. Maybe you go and work in this space, maybe you're doing it just for fun, but it's one of the other ways that we can help you transform your resume from when you get here to when you leave. So yeah, I mean, I could probably talk for the whole 45 minutes on this, and if you come and visit, we'll talk more about it. But yeah, very, very pleased with the way that we do this. Oh, Amy, I can't hear you. I think you're muted.
Got excited there. Thank you for highlighting the resources as well as that word access that Stephen used. Access not only to the career services team that is here, but also any single alum or recruiter that comes to campus. They come here and don't visit 10 other places in the same day. They have full eyes on you as a Tuck student. So that access is an incredible differentiator for our students. And one more question to Stephen before we open it up. Just would love to hear whatever you would like to share about outcomes and the success that you've seen for students and the career services team this year, and anything else you might want to share with our audience.
Sure. So, I mean, first of all, we're very proud of our outcomes. We have a very, very high percentage of students who graduate with a job and then have a job at 3 months post-grad, which are the two metrics we all look at. If you look at the last 4 or 5 years, we are routinely either the best or in the top 1 or 2 in those numbers, which I do think is important. Here's an interesting thought. I know somebody in the questions asked about our support for international students. I look at the outcomes week by week, how many of our students have received a job so far, and I track that, people with permanent work authorization, people who are here on a visa, and routinely the numbers are a fair share of the class size all the way through. So that's interesting. So that tells me actually that what we're doing works, whether you're coming and needing a visa or whether you are a citizen. One of the reasons for that is with the things I've talked about. Another reason is I think a lot of international students are looking at the sort of the big industries where companies are still very much equipped and able and happy and desirous of sponsoring visas. So, you go to a big bank or a big consulting company or a big company like Amazon, this is just what they do on a daily basis. They have whole teams of people who run the sponsorship process. So it's always worked for us in the past, and I think that will continue to work. And then finally, actually, my biggest metric that I judge myself on is do people seem happy? Like, are they dropping by, as Joe said? And I've got lots of thank you cards up there and people who drop by and they want to give you a hug and introduce you to their families when it's graduation. And that's, that's what we're in it for, is we're in it to help people through this kind of momentous, tumultuous time in their life that can be stressful, that many of us have gone through ourselves. And yeah, we want to just be there and provide that support.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. And again, the access and the support is something that students at Tuck feel very strongly. And just the ability to connect with anyone who is here, whether it's directly with Career Services or another member of the faculty or dean's team when it comes to the job search, or as you're going through your academics, whatever support you are seeking, it may come from your fellow classmate, it may come from your faculty member, it's going to come from all corners of Tuck, and people are very much willing to be there for you. And that's, again, coming back to the people makes a big difference in the challenges that you set before yourself in academics and in the job search when you start the MBA at Tuck. So we've done a little bit of talking. I think we've shared some great points, and I thank Joe and Stephen so much for all the direct experience they've shared with us here. But I'd love for our team to chime in, and we'll start to elevate some of the questions that you've asked.
Yeah, I can take this a bit. I'll start with this and then everyone can else join in. So how do we stand out in comparison to other world-class business schools in terms of networking, recruiting and support? And I think I've sort of started to cover some of that. So let me really touch on this second bit, which is quite interesting. How do resources differentiate from urban schools? I mean, that's interesting. When I did my undergraduate degree, I went to an urban school in the heart of London. And very much, I felt like I was commuting to work. Like you get up, you go to the school, you do your class, you then leave and you dissipate back into the city to sort of get on with your life. So first of all, that's not even a career thing. That's just a life choice thing of, do you want to be going somewhere where people have outside lives and then they go and sit in a classroom and then they go? Or you come here where everyone has moved here to live here all together and to study together and do everything together, actually. And that's what forms that esprit de corps, that sense of alumni connectedness. You're like, wow, you lived at Tuck for 2 years and you went to the same bar that I went to, same restaurant, you hiked the same mountains, you skied the same things, whatever things you're into. So then let's talk about recruiting then. So, and I touched on this as well. So if I'm living in Manhattan and my boss says, hey, can you go and do a presentation at the business school just down the road? I'll be like, awesome. I'll get in an Uber. I'll go to the school. I'll give it 45 minutes for the presentation. As soon as that presentation's finished, the car's waiting outside. I've got to be in it, back to the office or off to my client. So, in some ways, that's quite efficient. But that doesn't mean that you as a student get access to me. So, we touched on this. If I'm a recruiter and I come up to Tuck, I'm probably here for a longer period of time. I'll know that. I'll say to the career office, I'll say, hey, I'm going to be in town. Can you book me in? Can you find 10 students who want to have lunch with me, 20 students who want to have dinner with me? And this is the same with, whether this is, as I said, we had the CEO of McDonald's here recently, and he gave a big talk to the whole auditorium. Before that, he met with students. After that, he met with students, and the same with all of the different visitors who come here. So you might be thinking, okay, Stephen, what's the downside? Because great, you're all up on Tuck, but what's the downside? Are there places that I can't recruit at if I'm not in the city? And actually, I'd say no. I mean, if you want to work at a Wall Street bank, if you want to work at a big consulting firm, these firms are intelligent enough that they don't just only go and hire from the thing that's down the road. They recruit nationally, if not globally. So, when you apply to McKinsey, you'll tell them, do you want to be applying for London or Boston or San Francisco or Singapore? And that's all open to you, the same as it is for the investment banks. Yeah, on the margin, there might be a local startup that you might bump into and get to know in all the different regions you're in. And that's completely true. But I think there's a sort of a myth that the city schools sell, because that's their selling point of like, come here and you're just around the corner from the place that you'll get a job at. Well, we incidentally actually have the best numbers of people going to consulting firms, and yet none of those consulting firms are in Hanover. So that data tells me that there isn't a connection there.
And I'll speak to it tangentially that, we talked about the tight-knit community at Tuck, and, at many of our peer schools, the class size is so large that the focus of your interaction is going to be your section of students. the 60, 70, 90 students that you take your classes with. Here you'll be assigned to a section, but our class size is small enough where that isn't the primary focus of your interaction. And certainly we pit the sections against each other with, fun things like section wars, but you're going to get to know your entire class of MBA students, and you're going to know the class ahead of you and the class behind you. And that just leads to a very, very tight-knit alumni community down the road. Now, it's certainly true that many of our peer schools have a much larger alumni network than Tuck does. We're going to argue that quality trumps quantity. That, the Tuck alumni network is amazing. I reach out to them all the time when I'm doing research, when I'm setting up a factory visit, and it's amazing. I send an email, they'll respond. But it's not just me, it's students get responded to as well, in a way that I think sometimes surprises many of our students when they get here, that, oh my God, I send people emails and they actually respond to me. They offer to have a call with me. And that's what comes from this very tight-knit network, this shared experience of being a Tuckie. The alums want to talk to you. They'll give you career advice. They may work with you on case preparation, but they also want to talk to you about, what's your experience like at Tuck, and do you have Professor so-and-so, because they really remember a great class with them. So this tight-knit network really pays off in a multitude of ways. It makes it an enjoyable, a very great experience as a student. And then the 30, 40, 50-year career you're going to have, just an incredibly valuable thing.
So for this question, I just want to jump in briefly, because we're working with the incoming class of 2027 right now in admissions, and are working with everyone as an individual to understand where they are in their immigration process. And so again, the support at Tuck is going to, it starts the minute you become interested in Tuck, and it continues on as you're an admitted student, before you're even getting here, and then of course when you're here. So there is a lot of support right now for students who are in a situation where they're trying to get here and start their MBA. And so we work with and know every single student who's coming to Tuck.
And I'll add, from an administration perspective, our international students are an incredibly important part of the Tuck community. And their ability to get here and show up for our classes and our orientation program, this is something we are tracking day to day. And we will do what we need to do to support those international students who maybe won't be able to get here exactly for the start of orientation. We'll figure out a way to let them attend remotely during that time that they're still trying to secure their visa. So again, we think about this a lot every day. This is a topic of conversation here at Tuck, and we will do what we need to do to make sure that those students can get here and become part of the Tuck community.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, first of all, there's the personal side. So within our office, we have a dedicated advisor who works with international students, Arga. Arga herself moved to America as an immigrant, went through the whole visa, H-1B, green card, through to citizenship, and is very knowledgeable about this whole landscape of people coming from different countries and getting jobs here. So there's the sort of the head knowledge and the heart knowledge there that she's been through as well. I have as well. I came here as an immigrant, brought my family, and have gone all the way through to citizenship. So first of all, we know what it's like. We know how stressful it can be, how terrifying it can be at times to move to another country. The other thing I'd say actually is that, barring sort of massively unexpected things that nobody can predict what any government will do in 6 months or a year or 5 years. The current situation, assuming people can get here, and I understand that situation's up and running again, we have been doing very well, as I said, with international students getting jobs here, and I do think that's. Sorry, I just need to cancel that. Firstly, it's a lot of international students come here with very pragmatic goals. They're like, listen, I want to work in an industry that is known for sponsoring visas. And because of that, so then you're probably looking at consulting, finance, big tech, some of the big leadership companies for big companies, etc. That also, again, fits with our strengths. So we do those things very well. Secondly, that means then we've got a lot of alumni, probably even from your country, who went to Tuck, who are now at those companies, who can also, that's even more of a point of connection. I think sometimes when someone comes from out of America and they come here and I tell them, you've got to network, they're like, oh my God, we don't do that in my country. That's a new skill for me. I'm a bit scared about that. So I'll say, well, why don't you start? Here's some people from your country who work at that company, and they can give you sort of beginner networking conversations and help you, and actually help, maybe they even went to your university back home. So I think there is this sort of path of people get here, they work the process, and actually they do get the results. So if you ask me, am I worried about, in the current situation, students getting jobs? Actually, the answer is no. And as I said, the week by week numbers show that our international students are getting hired. There was actually a recent change, I believe, that the government has cracked down on people making multiple applications to the H-1B process, and that's actually worked. So that's actually made it, the odds of getting an H-1B this year are actually significantly better than they were the last few years, which is kind of counterintuitive, compared to all the noise that we see in the press. So it's still working. Our students are still getting visas. We've got many of them will use the 3 years worth of OPT that they get through taking the STEM classes that we offer, that we certify them for. And yeah, so far it's working. But we take this very seriously. It's one of the things that we think about all the time. Who wants to start? Shall I start, or Amy, do you want to?
Well, you've been through it. You've been through
Yeah.
it very personally.
First of all, Tuck is an incredible place for children. We're in the countryside. It's like living in a vacation resort. It's a truly safe place. So I've lived in my house for 14 years. I do not know where the front door key is. I literally walk out of my house, I go on vacation and leave the windows and doors unlocked. I leave my car unlocked all the time. So it's an incredibly safe place to be. It's a very welcoming place. There will be a community of people here with small children or couples, etc., and there will be a very strong community of that. My wife had the 2 years of her life when she was here with our children, being in that supportive community. And one of the reasons we came back to live here afterwards was that we both got home to London and we were like, wow, that was the best 2 years of our life. Like, we shouldn't have left that. And again, my kids had an awesome time here, and that's why we wanted to bring them back. A lot of the things that happen at Tuck are open to families and to partners. So, you can audit classes, you can join some of the clubs. When I'm walking around the building, I'll see partners, I'll see children. So it's a design feature, not a sort of an also run addition, I would say.
And Stephen making it true, the comment that I've heard so many times from alumni who say, if I could come back to Tuck and do it all over again, I would do it as a partner because I'd have none of the homework and all of the network. So exactly. if that says it, but the community extends to your partner, to your family in a very significant and meaningful way.
Here's another little quick thing. I said to my wife when we got here, hey, I've heard that the MBA is full on. I'm probably not going to see you very much. I was basically saying goodbye, see you in 2 years, even though we were living like an hour away, but a mile away. But because this is such a small community and we were living 1 mile away, I was seeing her all the time. I'd go home, I'd have lunch with the kids, I'd have a nap with the kids in the afternoon. I saw my family and my wife much more of those 2 years than I did later on when I was working. And again, that's because we're a small place. You get half an hour free, you can go home, they can come here, you can go for a walk with them. So it's almost like your life becomes everything, and it's not just now going to work or going to school. So it's a special time.
I'll take a crack at this. So, AI has been obviously had a huge impact on education over the last couple of years. The question is, how are we integrating into the curriculum? How are we addressing, how we assess learning? Over the 2.5 years or so that AI has been out in the marketplace, we've stood up 7 or 8 different classes focused on AI. We have a class on natural language processing. We have a class called AI for Managers. We have a class called Prescriptive Analytics with Generative AI, and a course on AI and society where we talk about bias, where we talk about challenges with alignment of AI. So a number of courses where we're using it. Other ways we're using it at Tuck, we've built a course chat bot that course materials that we post and share with students to answer student questions. So I just finished teaching the operations management course, and students could go in and use that chatbot to ask questions about any of the material that we covered in the class. They could ask it to generate practice problems or example quizzes. So we're using it in all kinds of ways as an organization as well. We were, I believe, the first business school to buy access to OpenAI's ChatGPT EDU for all of our students, all of our faculty, and all of our staff. So everyone at Tuck has full access to that system over the last academic year. So a number of things that we're doing to integrate it into what we do. I put together a new case this spring in the operations course where the case itself was a chatbot, and the students would go and ask questions of it and propose solutions and interact with that chatbot before they came to class, and we actually discussed the case. And I think we're going to see many of our other faculty doing the same thing of really creating live cases using chatbots going forward. In terms of some of the challenges, there's no question that we strive to ensure that our students are critical thinkers. And the way to become a critical thinker is to struggle with material, to really wrestle with material, to ask good questions and try to solve hard problems. And so while we all appreciate the idea that our students need to become facile with generative AI, we also do appreciate that when it comes to assessment, there are instances where we're not going to allow students access to generative AI to make sure that they are wrestling with the problems and developing that critical thinking. That the real fear is outsourcing all the thinking to these systems and not just using it to support your thinking and your approach to a problem. So it is true that for most of our exams, we're not allowing students to use these systems. Many of our exams are given in classroom settings where we can be assured that the students aren't using these systems. And as you might imagine, this is something that higher education and frankly, all of education is struggling a bit with. How are we going to assess learning? How are we going to assure that learning is taking place in an environment where these tools exist? One of our faculty members is actually giving oral exams. So at the end of the course, this faculty member is inviting each of the students in for a 30-minute conversation. And so this faculty member is literally spending about 40 hours at the end of the term with 80 students, half hour per student, 80 hours of time basically doing an oral assessment of the student's knowledge. And this faculty member has talked to the rest of us about how this has worked out. The faculty members made it very clear that within about 10 or 15 minutes, you can get a pretty good sense of whether the student has struggled with the material and really engaged with the material. So this is really an ongoing area where I think all schools are thinking about, how do we assess learning? And, I will say that our students have been very good about this. I think our students have really appreciate where it's appropriate to use these tools. And, we're not seeing any evidence, or at least very little evidence, of students using these tools where they're not supposed to be using them. So it's worked out pretty well so far, but there's no question this is something that all of education is going to be challenged with over the coming years.
Thank you.
So yeah, how does Tux help students who are seeking to change career path? And the example given is from tech consulting to finance. First of all, most of our students are looking to change careers. So, you can imagine if your career's going awesomely and you love it, you stay there. Like, don't come and do an MBA. So many people are looking to make a change. So first of all, you're not going to be alone. And then after that, I think the real question is, are there industries where you can get into them based on your sort of inherent qualities and the things you learn at a business school versus what you need to have done in the past? And some are yes and some are no. So things like finance, actually, the good news there is, yes, they are looking for smart people who can learn their industry and can demonstrate in an interview process the ability to learn that, and they've started it, but you don't need to have done that job in the past. And that's why, actually, I think, consulting and banking have perennially been two of the big takers from business schools, because they're able to say, yeah, you probably did something different before. Maybe you're a doctor or a teacher, or you're in the army, or you're an athlete, or whatever, you're a tech consultant. If your brain works the way we think it does, we can hire you. So then, how do we help? Some things that are differentiated. We've talked about our advisors. One of the things that actually, I think, if you get here and you're not entirely sure what you want to do, we have awesome clubs. One curiosity: we don't charge admissions for our clubs, and we don't have any, barriers to entry. So you can join the finance club, the marketing club, the tech club, the consulting club. Go to all of them. Have at it. Most other schools charge you hefty fees to join the club, or they maybe even have like a, criteria that you can only join if you do a certain thing. That's crazy to me. So we've got the clubs. We've got Deirdre. If you want to do finance, honestly, Deirdre will become one of your key supporters. You will work with her sometimes on an almost daily basis. She's incredibly connected with the banks. She's incredibly connected with the alumni there. And then, as we talked about, it's the alumni who will also help you. And I bet you will be able to find, with our support, people in the banks you want to work at who maybe they were consultants before, maybe they worked in tech before. And then finally, maybe you're going to go into a tech vertical, somewhere where you can have a bit of confidence in, okay, I know the material, I know the industry, but that's not essential. But Nikhil, yeah, main thought is you wouldn't be alone, and this is absolutely a very, very common thing to do.
Thank you so much, Stephen, for putting a point on that. I think we're going to get ready to close it out with all the great introductions, the awareness of the curriculum, the evolution of what's been new in the curriculum, and also the support from career services. And I come back to something that Joe mentioned at the very beginning, just the core values at Tuck: personal, connected, transformative, the personal piece of us getting to know you, you getting to know us, the connected piece of you, your faculty, career services, all the resources at Tuck, as well as alumni, and just the transformative impact all of that will have on your aspirations for yourself, your leadership journey, and your career. And so we thank you for taking time out to hear a little bit more about Tuck. We know there are more questions, and thankfully we are easy to find. So sharing more questions with tuck.admissions is easy to do, and then I can share those with others around the community who may be the experts for those questions. But thank you so much, Stephen and Joe, for your time, and just really appreciate the questions from the audience. So thanks.
I'll say the same thing. Thank you, and thanks for the great questions.
Good luck with your application processes, everybody.